First tonight, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has warned the Trump administration that any U.S. military intervention against his country will cause irreparable damage for them. Speaking on state television, the Ayatollah decried what he called threatening and ridiculous comments from President Trump, who on Tuesday said Iran should surrender. President Trump is weighing up whether to back Israel with U.S. military force in its conflict with Iran. As Jerusalem strikes military facilities in the country, the mood in Tehran has darkened into fear, panic, and for some, revenge. Some residents say they cannot believe that the world is watching as Israel bombs a city of 10 million people, and there don't appear to be any consequences. The Israeli military says it struck nuclear missile production sites in Iran, with more than 50 warplanes deployed on the sixth day of airstrikes. There have been no injuries reported in Israel in the latest volleys of missiles from Iran. But as a result of Tehran's retaliatory attacks, nearly 4,000 people have been evacuated, though it does seem as if Israel's air defense system has mostly been working. But it's been reported that it costs around $250 million a night. And a report in the Washington Post quotes a source briefed on US and Israeli intelligence assessments as saying that without resupplies from the US or greater involvement by American forces, Israel will only be able to maintain its missile defense for 10 more days if Iran maintains a steady tempo of attacks.
Last night, Israeli Air Force fighter jets, guided by precise intelligence, completed another series of strikes in Tehran. The extensive operation involved more than 50 fighter jets, lasted over 3 hours, and included 3 waves of strikes. During the operation, we struck a centrifuge production site that was intended to enable the regime to continue to enhance its uranium enrichment.
Well, for his reaction and assessment, I'm joined now on the line from here in Abuja by the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, Michael Freeman. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Freeman, for joining us. And as you might have heard in the introduction there, a clear message of defiance from Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as he reacted to President Trump's call for an unconditional surrender. What's your reaction to that?
Well, good evening, Charles. Thank you very much for having me on. Look, it doesn't surprise me. Here we have a leader, a dictatorial leader of Iran, who is refusing to listen to the messages, to refusing to negotiate on the issue of Iran's nuclear weapons. We've been very clear, the world has been very clear, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran is not allowed to have one because they have been very clear that they are going to build a nuclear weapon in order to use it. And they're going to use it against Israel, who they, for the last 40 years, have been threatening to wipe Israel off the map. They have been threatening to attack America, the great Satan, as they call them. And so what we're seeing here is a dictatorial regime that is refusing to give up the worst weapon of all that they're aiming for, and to give up the uranium enrichment. And therefore, that's what's happening at the moment. We're seeing Israel taking action to stop Iran from having this weapon.
So after 6 days of war with Iran, how would you say Israel is faring?
We started this operation, a preemptive operation, because we faced a threat, an existential threat from the state of Iran. As I said, Iran for the last 40 years has been threatening Israel, has been calling for its destruction, and over the last number of years has been also pursuing a nuclear weapon. And in the last few weeks, we have seen that Iran is much closer to a nuclear weapon than anybody thought. We saw the IAEI make a statement that that Iran was no longer abiding by its commitments into the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. We have seen intelligence assessments that said that Iran is getting much closer to a weapon than anyone thought. And therefore, there was a window of opportunity for us to strike because we've learned something over the last 80 years or over the last couple of thousand years, that when somebody stands up and says they want to kill you, when somebody stands up and says they want to wipe you out, you need to listen to them. So Israeli home front is taking a number of missile strikes. Unfortunately, 24 Israelis have been murdered by the Iranian missiles that have fallen there. But the Israeli public understands that this is necessary, that this is what we need to do in order to prevent Iran from having the worst weapon of all, and that would be a nuclear weapon that they would put on their ballistic missile program.
And talking about ballistic missiles, the Iranians are saying that for the first time in this war, they've used a hypersonic missile, which is more difficult to intercept by air defenses. I mean, but Israel says there have been no casualties.
Well, in the last few days, fortunately, there have been no casualties. Our air defense system has been successful in shooting down all of those missiles. Our air defense system is the best air defense system in the world. Over the course of this war, we've had about a 95% success rate in shooting down missiles. Unfortunately, though, we can't be 100%. And so some of those missiles have got through and have killed innocent women and children, including a 7-year-old girl who came to Israel for cancer treatment. And instead of getting the cancer treatment she was looking for, she ended up getting killed by an Iranian missile.
What is Israel trying to achieve with this war with Iran? Is it just to neutralize Iran's nuclear program, or is it more than that, possibly even regime change?
Israel's aims are very clear. We want to stop Iran's nuclear program, but we also want to stop their ballistic missile program. Iran, before this operation, was aiming to build 300 ballistic missiles a month, was aiming to build a capacity of 20,000 missiles, which it intends to use. And these missiles had huge ranges. They weren't missiles that could only reach Israel. They are missiles that can reach Africa, large parts of Africa, that can reach large parts of Europe. And you have to ask, why does a country like Iran need a huge missile that can reach all of these places in Europe and in Africa if they don't intend to use it?
And would it be fair to say, Ambassador, that Israel is waiting and hoping for some kind of direct American involvement? Because, I mean, you don't have the kind of bunker-busting bombs needed to strike a key nuclear facility that is buried deep inside a mountain known as the Fordo facility. So a key question is whether the Americans are going to join the Israelis in this campaign. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's obviously a decision for President Trump and for the Americans, what they want to do. I think America understands that the Iranian threat is not a threat only to Israel, it's a threat also to America. The Iranian leadership have been very clear over the last years that they want to wipe out what they call the Great Satan. We have seen that Iranian proxies in Hezbollah and in Hamas and in the Houthis and in various different militias in Iraq have killed hundreds of Americans in the last 40 years. They've murdered them in the Marine barracks in Lebanon. They've murdered them through Hamas terror attacks. They've murdered them in many different ways. And so I think that the American president, the American people understand the threat that Iran poses. They understand what a nuclear weapon would be in their hands. And President Trump's been very, very clear. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and that he has demanded the unconditional surrender of Iran. If Iran is not prepared to give up its weapon, and if Iran is not prepared to make it clear that it will stop its uranium enrichment, it will stop its ballistic missile program, and it will stop its nefarious activities, then President Trump and the American people will make a decision, and I'm sure they'll make the right decision for America and for the region.
I mean, it's very interesting that Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Iran was on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon, but the assessment from the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, and many members of the international community is that Iran had not made a decision to weaponize its program. And critics of Netanyahu, both inside and outside Israel, say that this is a war of choice, and Iran sees it as a war of aggression, and as such it has the right to defend itself. I mean, in those circumstances, it's hard for the Americans to get more involved, isn't it? Especially given that American interests in the Middle East are likely to become legitimate targets.
Well, Iran over the last 40 years, but particularly in the last 2 years, has proven that it's very actively involved in the region and very actively attacking Israel. We saw on the 7th of October 2023 Hamas come across the border and murder and rape and torture and kidnap. That was all sponsored and funded by Iran. We've seen Hezbollah, what they've done to Israel with their rockets and their missiles, sponsored by Iran. We've seen what the Houthis have done in Yemen, firing missiles, firing drones at Israel, also sponsored by Iran. So Iran is a sponsor of terrorism across the region. We've also seen Iranian nationals arrested across the world for planning terror attacks on Israeli and Jewish targets throughout the world. So this is something that Iran's been working on and planning for years. This is certainly not something that started on Friday night. This is something that Iran's been going on for a long time. But more than that, our intelligence is absolutely excellent. I think that anybody who witnessed what happened on Thursday night, Friday, when Israel began this operation, with the huge amount of intelligence we had on where the leading people within the nuclear program were living, where the leaders of the Republican Guards were at that moment, what was happening at various different nuclear installations, and our ability to strike surgically, to strike accurately, and to get at all of our targets within 20 seconds of each other shows that our intelligence is second to none. And if that intelligence is second to none, when our intelligence sources tell us that Iran is moving much faster towards the bomb than anybody thinks and anybody anticipates, we believe them. And you have to remember that for the last number of years, Israel is the one who provided to the IAE many different pieces of evidence. We're the ones who brought the Iranian nuclear archive. We pointed out a number of different sites in Iran that nobody was aware of that had nuclear particles detected there. We showed that there were things happening in different sites that no one was aware of. So our intelligence is very, very good inside Iran, and our intelligence agencies were very clear. Iran is moving forward. They will have enough material for 9, maybe 15 bombs within a matter of weeks. And therefore, we believe that this was an opportunity to stop an existential threat. And I'll say finally, Charles, that we know that Iran actually developed a program that was called the Program of the Elimination and Destruction of the State of Israel. They had a state-sponsored program that was developed, that was an active program to wipe out and destroy the state of Israel. And therefore, Israel acted to make sure that Iran could not do what it wanted to do, and that is wipe out the state of Israel.
So what do you think might happen next, Ambassador? I mean, are there different end games that you might want to articulate for us?
The end game that we want is an end to the Iranian nuclear program, an end to the Iranian ballistic missile program, and a clear commitment from the world and from Iran that this won't ever be built again. And if they do try and build it again, there'll be very quick, instant action in order to stop any rebuilding of that program. We will continue this campaign until we have destroyed the Iranian ballistic missile capability and we have destroyed the Iranian nuclear capability. If tomorrow Iran volunteers to give up that ability and is willing to take it apart under full supervision, then that's one way of this ending. Otherwise, we will have to use the military force in order to make sure that there is no ballistic missile and no nuclear weapon capability in the hands of the mullahs and the tyrants of Tehran.
Mr. Freeman, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sir Michael Freeman is the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria. He was talking to me on the line from here in Abuja.